Welcome back to another episode of UnAesthetically Speaking. I'm your host, Juliana Mary, and today we are chatting with Megan Gonzalez of MaeMae Co. Megan is a fantastic brand designer and somebody that I've been following, um, gosh, uh, for years. Since I started my business, you have been kind of this person that I have been watching and being inspired by. So I'm really excited that you're here and chatting with me. And I would love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your business, how you got started, what you're up to now, all the good things.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Juliana. I really appreciate you saying that too, that I was inspiring you as you were starting. That means a lot. I started my business in college as MaeMae Papery. I did wedding invitations, and then nobody was hiring after I graduated. So I worked for myself, and it evolved into branding design, and has had a gajillion other evolutions in the process, including styling, running other people's companies, um, helping with marketing strategies. And for the past year, I've returned to branding design, working with other women who love to evolve.
Amazing. So that was actually, so you mentioned like your styling and your stationery business, and that was how I first found you. And that was at least 6 years ago, I think that I first came across you.
Yeah.
And because I was a stationery designer and I needed good photos and good styling of my work, and I couldn't find anybody to do it. So I was like, okay, I've got to just learn how to do this on my own. And then I found you, and you were teaching courses on how to style paper. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. There's actually somebody who gets it. And so that was kind of my first introduction to you. It was an online course, and that actually got me started in my business. And still to this day, I work with probably 70% of my clients are stationery designers,
So cool.
um, which I just think is so funny. And I wonder how many people start off doing. You do one thing and it leads you to another thing and another thing and another
Yes.
thing. And
Yes.
it sounds like that's been really similar for you? Like you
Yes.
started off as a stationery designer. How did that lead you into styling? Was it kind of a
Right.
similar
You know
thing?
what? I actually am thinking about, I can see it from here. I have this little red journal. When I started in wedding stationery, I did it because I was engaged, like a classic ring by spring gal, um, my senior year
Okay.
of college. And I was designing my own wedding stationery, and I was at home for Christmas break, and my dad was like, wow, these are really good, like you could sell this. And it was so affirming. I studied fine art in school, and I think that there's this
Okay.
trepidation, like what are you going to do as a someone who's studying art
As an
in
artist.
school or a career after. And I was so fired
Hmm.
up by that affirmation. I had hoped after school to go into publishing design, book covers. I just love books and magazines so much, something in print. And the timing in the world of when I graduated was not so hot for someone who just studied fine art. And I lived in the high desert of California with my husband, Jason. So I started to offer my services to other people in my area, and it grew from there. And then as you're trying to learn how to share your work with other people, that led me to
Hmm.
studying photo styling. My The first way that I would show people my work wasn't even my own work. I would rip out pages from Martha Stewart Wedding and put it in a 3-ring binder and like those slip things. And I would come to meetings with clients and just as they would share about their wedding, I had everything memorized in the binder. And I would say, oh, what if we did something like this? And I would reference other people's work. So I was already looking at these beautifully styled wedding invitations. Um, and then, as I had my own body of work, it was like, how do I share this? And I remember getting a small piece of foam core, probably at like Staples or something, and laying out a bunch of my wedding stationery on it, and then opening the front door to our apartment and standing in the threshold to get better light. And I had I want to say I was using a point and shoot, maybe. No, maybe I had a what are they called? DSLR. like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
real camera. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to photograph it, and the wind was blowing all the paper everywhere. It was really windy up there, and I'm like, it was just such a frustrating process. Um, and then I sold all of my books from college on halfpricebooks.com, like one by one. Like it was such a labor of love to do it. I probably could have earned the money faster, just like dog walking or something else, but I bought a macro lens. I think I thought like if I could get a macro lens, I could photograph my work better. But yeah, I had no like training in how to photograph my work. So it was honestly studying other images in magazines that I loved and other stationers that were up and coming at the same time. I loved looking at Anna Bond's work from Rifle. Um,
Yeah.
I can't remember her last name. Her name was Cynthia. I absolutely loved her work. So there were other women that I was following that I was trying to emulate, like, oh, they have some twine in the picture, so I should get some twine. Oh,
Yeah.
I would start to print other pieces that the client didn't even order so that the suite felt more finished. And then like my real breakthrough moment was I just like made a design for a wedding invitation that was not for a client. It was just an idea that I had. And I had a lot of fun
Hmm.
styling it and photographing it. And that really, I would say, like allowed me to go to like a new level because I was expressing like what I wanted to make instead of just making something custom for other people. And it just like built from there. But I remember in this little red journal I had, it said like, what is like a dream no one knows? And I wrote to be a photo stylist because I fell in love with that process of like photographing my
Yeah.
work, sharing it. Um, and it was such a part of the actual like bit of that marketing of my business. I think sometimes you can have a beautiful product, but if it's not styled and photographed in a way that has like a signature branded look, it could get
Hmm.
lost. And so that was for me like a way I like got my hooks into photo styling. When we moved to Minneapolis, I had built a team there, and one of my team members, she had previously worked as a photo stylist at a magazine. And
Oh.
so I learned so much from her. She was my studio manager, but so much more than that. Um, and from like watching her and watching the way she would break down other people's images, and she taught me to lift things up off the backdrop. She taught me about painting boards, getting fabrics as backdrops. She just like really added a lot of context to the images through her experience and knowledge. And
Hmm.
had this beautiful studio in downtown Minneapolis that had so much space to play versus when you're at your house, you've got to tidy up every time. Um, and so I just got to experiment and play with photo styling for no reason, like both to promote my work, but then to promote process. Like I photographed and styled a lot of moments of me painting or editing things that I would print out and had notes on it. Uh, Different like inspiration boards or even like hanging up boards places. And Instagram was really growing at that time. And I think that the combination of the people I was around, the space I had, and the moment in history, it just like was the perfect moment that I could do this thing for fun style. And
Hmm.
had a meaning. It had a purpose. It like moved my business forward. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that get me excited creatively that I would love to spend time on, but then you have to use wisdom and say, well, I need to complete the tasks that I need to do. But I think with photo styling, it was like this, it helps me get new clients. So like I should keep doing it. Um, and
Right.
with the
Fun
team,
and
yeah, exactly. It's fun and it moves the business forward. With my big team and my big studio, I just ran so much debt and I was so burned out. And so I moved away from a team, from my own space, and moved into a shared space. And at the time, I had such a fantastic creative and church community around me. And most people knew like what I was walking through, the people that I knew in real life. So I had people like asking me all the time, like, are you doing okay? What are you going to do next? Because I had started applying for jobs and was going to just say goodbye to MaeMae. And I was able to, in the process of applying for jobs that I was not getting, I was able to take a lot of wisdom I gained from older people that I met with to ask, like, what am I doing wrong in my business? Like, help. And I was able to take on new work and charge and finish things in a way that allowed me to get out of debt really fast. And as people asked me, like, what are you going to do? And I would tell them, I'm going to keep doing this. And they're like, well, what are you going to offer? Like, what about a team? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm going to be a photo stylist. And I would just start to post, probably solely on Instagram. Like, I'm now accepting photo styling clients. And I just started to get
Mm-hmm.
inquiries, do mostly paper at the beginning. And then it
Yeah.
evolved into a lot of gifting products. I did a lot of food. And yeah, I did branding in parallel. And then that eventually like kind of petered out. And I just worked as a photo stylist probably for 2 or 3 years. Um,
Okay.
and then, yeah, so that was such a joyful experience. So hard. You like learn about all the things you didn't realize go into styling and new other mediums. Styling paper is one thing, styling, for a Fortune 500 company is totally different. Styling with a massive
Mm-hmm.
team versus when I produce everything and it's my team is different. So it was really neat to learn the ins and outs of doing styling.
Okay, I have so many questions. So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit in your story because there are so many good moments in there that I think as creative entrepreneurs, like there are all these highs and lows in business where one minute like you're rocking it. Like you said, you had a studio, you had a team, you had all the things, and then the next you're like, okay, like I'm in debt, I need to downsize, maybe I need to go get a job. And I think we've all been there multiple times where it's just like it can feel like a roller coaster and it can be really difficult to kind of stay the course and stay with your vision.
Yeah.
So you mentioned um well, a couple things, and feel free to get as deep as you want into any of these, but I would imagine that decision to go from your studio into a shared space and letting go of your team was really difficult. So I
Mhm.
don't know if you want to speak about that, and I would love to know what some of that wisdom was that you mentioned. You said there were some people who gave you some really great advice and some
Yeah.
wisdom that helped you keep going.
Right. Yeah, I think the feeling of when I decided to let go of my team in studio initially was relief. Um,
Okay.
I think I thought once I would have those things, I made it. And then you realize when
Yeah.
you're living it, this isn't what the outward signals of making it don't tell you anything about what it feels like to have to manage and hold
Mm,
those things. I had this little
mm-hmm.
keychain that my dad had given me, and I thought once I had a key on that keychain that was like my own storefront, studio, whatever, like I've made it. And it was so nobody told me that. I never read that. I think it was stories you watch, stories you read,
Mm-hmm.
um, social media. You're like, oh, once you have a space, you've made it. So I think I had really
Yeah.
idealized the space. And so letting go of it felt like a relief. And then it was like, what are people going to think? That was like my next thing. First, it was like, I
Mm.
didn't know how heavy this would be to hold. And next, it's like, people are going to think I'm weak, that I can't hold this. Um, and I
Oh,
think that's what's so important about having people that know the deep parts of you, because being known, I think, is such a for me, being known is such a high value. um and so I think I felt nervous about what my general creative community would think of me if I no longer had that space. um
Mm.
But when you have people that know you, they know you're so much more than your business and your space. And it was a really great time to untether my identity from my business. But the question I kept asking myself as I applied for jobs is, who am I if I'm not MaeMae? And MaeMae is a name that
Mm.
my brother first called me, and then a lot of my good friends, and then it became my business name. And a lot of friends and colleagues will call me MaeMae, like as a nickname or May. And so I
Yeah.
think I thought, if I don't have my business, I'm not me anymore. I'm not MaeMae. I'm not May, which wasn't true. And I knew that. But it was also like, I care so deeply about what people think about me. And I am so prideful that I want to maintain that image, that it was terrifying. It felt like a death to like let go of that version of me, or like that name. Um,
Yeah.
and it was so humbling, like going to these job interviews. And at one job interview, they're like, "So you've never had a job?" And it's like, well, I've literally worked with, I've
Well,
served literally thousands of people, like through my stationery and my store and like all these, and you're like, yeah, I guess I've never had a classical job since turning 21. I
right,
don't,
I've never gotten a W-2.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then another one was like, I don't know why you want to work here. I feel like we would carry your line here, and you're like, like it just felt really
Mm.
unknown and really lost in that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to parallel that, the wisdom that I was given, I met with 5 different business owners that were older than me. And I first realized that I was definitely like in an echo chamber. Like I had a great community and we were learning and growing at the same pace, which is so
Mm.
inspiring and supportive. But when you don't have people who are ahead of you and have already, done decades of the mistakes and the wins, you are not getting the opportunity to like learn so many more things. Um, so I
Yeah.
would say 2 things that were really big for me. One was, don't hire anyone until you have minimally 6 months of their pay saved, which I was
Mm.
like, yeah, do that. Like my business,
Yeah.
in my newest phase of my business now, which since I ended styling, I feel like there were 3 more phases. And then now, but I like am trying to break this so trying to do it. Like, come on, be a grown up. But I just have like this snowball effect where it's like I market myself and then I get a lot of work and then I have too much work. And then I hire people to help me with the work. And then sometimes they'll help you get more work. It just like feels like this snowball effect of like it keeps growing and growing and growing. And so saying no and having better time boundaries and better understanding of what I'm capable of. I feel like so that those conversations I had to gain that wisdom was in 2015. I mean, that's 9 years ago, and I'm still learning that. I haven't hired anyone. I've only subcontracted ever since, which has been really phenomenal, because it allows me to bake a subcontractor's cost into my bids with a client. So that has been something I have learned. Um, and then another thing that I kind of go back and forth on where I land with this. Maybe it's a stubbornness in me, but was the advice like, stick to one thing, don't do branding and wedding stationery. And I feel
Ooh,
like
that's
kind of say,
a one.
huh. Or like, just like don't have these services that are so different. Um, and let's see. I guess I actually, now that I reflect, I did take that advice, but I have held other services that don't necessarily parallel one another since. And now I don't. So I think that I'm processing right now. We're on the therapist bed. I agree with it. So in 2015, I stopped doing wedding stationery and it was a hard no. And I've never done it since. I sold
Okay.
whole collection of wedding invitations to Basic Invite. And so you can
Yeah, I
actually
actually
still buy
noticed
those.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was actually like 3 years after I stopped doing it. So that was like a really sweet bow on that chapter. Because I was
Mhm.
really proud of that work, but it's hard. It's hard. Um, so yeah, I would say those are the 2 pieces of wisdom that really helped me create clarity where to go next.
And so you have continued though to evolve in your business. So you went from stationery design to photo styling
Mhm.
to brand design. So how does that process happen for you? Is it sort of organic where you start do you get an interest first in something else, or do you get a client that comes to you and wants something different, or I, just walk me through that. How has that been for you, and what has led
That's a
you to
good
keep
question.
evolving?
I think it is being inspired by other creatives and wanting to make things like that, or being in the process of doing something with a client and realizing like, oh, I would love to offer, I could do this for you too. A
Right.
lot of my styling started as paper when it was just they were hiring me for styling, but I
Hmm.
was doing brand design, website design, and then telling them I can do the photos for your website. So it was like this enthusiasm to like, I want your brand to be all the things I know it could be. And instead,
Hmm.
like most of my clients are, a team of 10 or smaller. And so
Okay.
that's different than working like with a massive organization. And they don't have endless resources, and I get really sometimes overly passionate about like I just like I have so much ownership. I always call it like we and our, like I just am really passionate. I like,
Yeah.
and I would just want it to feel finished. I would want them to have everything they needed for their brand to succeed. So I think that's often how I start offering something new. I've started to do a lot of copywriting for clients, and I think that was very
Oh.
similar. Yeah, so I originally, so before it, from 2021-ish to 2023, I was working with a longtime client in a full-time capacity, first as her creative director and then as her COO. And I did so
Okay.
much writing and just like really came to love it. And my husband is a writer and editor, and he would just like push me, and we would have the most like contentious conversations, but he really pushed me to grow and refine my writing. And now I'm just really passionate about it. And so I've started to offer that to clients. So I do think it's a bit of inspiration and then wanting to give my client everything and seeing the skills I've gained in these different chapters. Like
Hmm.
what I'm doing right now, I think back and it's like there's a lot of uncomfortable, hard um, bits that I've gone through, services I've offered, clients I've worked with, but that has all refined me to be who I am now, to offer with confidence the array of branding services to my clients. And I'm like, I wouldn't trade
Hmm.
all that hard work, all of those dark valleys for where I've landed with the skills from doing all of those different, really different things.
Hmm. I love that. So, how do you balance, or maybe I don't know if balance is even the right word, but how do you talk about all those different services that you're offering? Because they are all related and they
Right.
all do serve like, the same person. Do you find that it's difficult in your messaging at all, or does it just sort of come up organically with your clients? What is that like?
Right. I
To be like,
think
I can
that
do this, I can do these 10 different things for
right,
you that are
right.
all going to elevate your brand.
I think before this last year, I felt really insecure about the array of skills that I had. Like I would have loved for it to just have one title. Like when you're filling something out and they're like,
Yeah.
what's your title or what do you do? And you're like even as silly as
Yeah.
being at a doctor's office and it's like occupation and you're like,
Yeah.
uh, like
I don't know.
moments where you're just like, I don't, how important is it to know, should I get really detailed so like you can serve me better as a healthcare professional, silly things like that. Um,
That's funny. Yeah.
and so I did have a lot of insecurity before, but now what is, I mean, I think what's tough is having never worked at an agency, a branding, a creative, an ad agency, having only ever worked for myself, I initially didn't know what I didn't know and didn't care. Then you start to realize, oh, I don't know a lot of things and I feel insecure about that. Like, how are they doing it? And then photo styling was actually a really neat way to learn about these big brand and ad agencies, because I would come in as a photo stylist and get to meet these people that, you know, they were the art director, the creative director, the producer,
Yeah.
the project manager, client manager. Like, I met all of these people and started to like see how an agency worked. I started to see how creative was birthed out of strategy. There was a company, Traditional Medicinals. It's a tea company. And I worked with an
Okay. Yeah.
agency yeah. Um, I worked with an agency in Minneapolis that they were the client for. And so I got to see how they would translate the client's request into a story, into a storyboard, into like the inspiration for the photo, like how prepared we had to be for the photo before we got there because the client was going to be there. It was like great training to understand all of those different services. And I got to see different individual humans represent all those services. And then you realize, oh, there are also creative agencies where it's one or two people leading it, and they might subcontract out work. So it just started to help me understand, like, that is actually really normal for one company to offer all of those things. And it's less common for it to be one individual, but I'm here to be less common.
Absolutely. That's funny. That's a great way to look at it. Um, okay. And if this is too personal, you can say, no, and I'll edit it out. But you mentioned at the very beginning, what's a dream no one knows? And it used to be photo
Oh,
stylist.
yeah.
Do you have a dream now that no one knows
That is
that
such a
you
good
want to share? You don't have to.
Man, no, but I need one.
Don't. It's okay. Because I totally put you on the spot with that. But I think
And
that was so, I wrote that down when you said it because I'm like, oh man, what's my, I started thinking, gosh, what's my
yeah,
dream no one knows? And
yeah,
it's a hard question, unless,
it is.
you're very dissatisfied in what you're doing. Then of course you have a dream no one knows, right? But when you love what you're doing,
Right.
maybe you don't, you
Yeah.
know?
Right
So I was
now,
just curious.
I've been doing, I've been listening to a lot of books about deep work, discipline,
Okay.
deep practice, and just like refining what I do. And so I don't know, I guess I've never said this, but it's like I want to be one of the best designers. I think I feel like I'm good at art direction and I'm great
Mhm.
at styling. And I felt like there was a stopping point as a designer where it was like, that's all I got. I don't think I can get any better. I think we just got to hire people out? And
Yeah.
I recently, from like this deep study, deep work, deep discipline and practice, I'm like, I think I can become a great designer. So I think while people might be like, don't you already care about being a designer? And like any of my clients who are listening are like, aren't you a great designer? Like, when did I hire you? But like, I want to like win awards. Like, I want to be
Great.
like,
Right.
great, great,
Another
great.
level.
And I think I let go of that idea quite a while ago. And I know like that I'm a good leader and a good strategist, and like holistically all the services I offer, like that they are good. But it's like, I just want to
Hmm.
be a phenomenal designer. And I think that really challenges
Yeah.
me because that requires practice. That requires not just like doing the same dance you always do with your design. I had two
Yeah.
clients in probably the last quarter where I got really pushed by them to do better and to not do my classic MaeMae dance with my design. And that was like what awoke
Okay.
me to like, there's something more and I can do it. And I want to. I don't want to like get stagnant with my design ability and just hire it out. I mean, I want to bring in the best people to give my clients the best branding experience possible, but I know there's more for me as a designer, which surprises me to say because I think it felt like a relief to say I don't think I can get any better than this, or just like naturally I'll get a little better incrementally. Like I
Right.
used to play the violin, and it's like as I've been reading or listening to this book about talent, and it's this whole idea that it's more about the discipline of practice. And I was like, oh yeah, I would just show up and be like, "Ah, rah, rah, rah," you know, like play the thing and and I'm like, that's what I want to do with my design work. I want to practice. And that doesn't mean just showing up and making the thing for the client. Like you need to
Mhm.
learn more. I'm like, do I need to go to some drawing classes? I don't know. I don't know what it will take for me to become a better designer, but I need to like gain more tools and not just do what is comfortable and what I already know.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I asked you. And I love that comparison. Talking about like that you used to play the violin. I play the harp and I
Yeah.
don't play that much anymore. But when I think back, and I've never really thought about comparing the two things, but when I was like a serious harpist and I played all through college and everything, and when you practice, like you would break, to get really good at something, you have to break it down by the measure, right? And
Right.
then practice that one measure over and over and over until it's perfect.
Yes.
And then practice the next measure over and over and over until it's perfect. And then you put it all together and you've got something really beautiful. And thinking about your talent with your business and thinking about it that way, I'm thinking to like photography, right? Like
Yeah.
I think I'm a good stylist. I think I'm a good photographer. So kind of the same with you. I hope no clients are like just good, but you think about like wanting to be great and how maybe there is some comparison there to like how you practice music or like a sport even, if you're
Right.
like a soccer player, right? You kick the ball over and over and over and over to in all the different positions to learn how
Right.
to do it the best you can. Maybe it's the same in visual arts, practicing
Definitely.
one little thing.
Yes.
I've never thought
Yes.
about it that way.
I had a teacher in school that had us, rip a page out of a magazine and then emulate it. Like we had to figure out what all the fonts
Yeah.
were. We had to figure out the spacing. And it was very enlightening to realize, like, oh, this goes really well with this. And like, this should take up this much of the page and this should take up this. And so I've recently been thinking about that and have started to emulate a designer that I really love and like learning how she's doing
Mhm.
it. And then you have to say, I'm not going to copy what you do and deliver it to a client and say, this is for you. And I just am giving it to you like this because I really love your work, but it's learning the
Yeah.
move. It's learning the recipe, the combinations. So I've been doing that a lot. Been like on websites, looking at code and like looking, oh, okay, so those are the fonts, like, oh, those go well together. Looking at colors, like, oh,
Mhm.
that's easy to read. So it's instead of so much doing, adding into my day a lot of learning and a lot of copying for practice, not
Yeah.
copying to say I made
Right.
this.
Give as a final product. Right.
Yeah.
And there is that balance, if for people listening, if you're just starting out, but learning that. And I think all great, when you go to school for art, that it's exactly what they have you do. Just
Yeah.
remember when I took a watercolor painting workshop and they said, okay, pick out a painting from someone you love and we're going to recreate it. And so there was this artist, well, and I've worked with her a couple times, Oana Bayfort, and I love her artwork and just learning how to like recreate that. But then, like you said, not posting it and claiming it as your own original
Right.
idea. So there is that line, but learning, oh, okay, this is how they
Yeah.
got there.
Yes.
And then
And I
those
think
applying those skills.
yes, that's really beautiful. I think the the bait that's waved in front of creatives too is that there's something in us. Like we want to make something original and something new so
Mm-hmm.
desperately that we pass up learning from other people.
Yeah.
And something that has helped me slow down to learn is like the idea, like there is nothing new under the sun. So stop putting so much pressure on myself to make something no one has ever seen, and instead put the
Mm-hmm.
emphasis on really understanding what does this client need and give them that. Go collect that, go make that, go like research what do they need to stand out in their market and speak to their specific audience instead of making it about me and I want to make the best thing. So that has
Yeah.
taken a lot of pressure off and put it and placed it into a place that I think will actually help move the needle forward, um, as a creative and as a, service provider for the future.
Absolutely. And just to take it back to music, I remember learning when I was studying music, we would have to study like pieces of music from famous composers.
Mhm.
And you would see they would take riffs of, music from another famous piece and they would put
Mhm.
it in their music and it would be just a couple measures, or they would take those notes and like invert them, and but it was from something else. And so this idea that there is nothing new, it's just we're all just borrowing from other
Yes.
things that we love.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
too, finding that great within us as an artist or as somebody, especially when you're posting a lot on Instagram or putting things out in the world, not feeling too precious about those things. I think sometimes people will say, "Oh, well, I came up with this idea and now somebody else is taking it." Understanding that no, we are all just borrowing from each other, and again, you don't want to do the exact same thing and post it and claim it as yours, but borrowing these ideas from people and then incorporating it into something new, I think is acceptable, is
Yeah.
the way to come up with something new. It's combining
Right.
different ideas.
Absolutely. And I've been that person who's like, you copied me. How dare you? And like confronted
We all
people.
have.
And I feel so mortified about that because we are learning from each other, right? Like, who was I? I was probably like 23, 24 at the time when I sent out these messages to people. Like, if you're listening, I'm really sorry. That was so prideful. But about honestly, a week ago, I saw something on Pinterest from a design firm I really admire. And it was
Mhm.
the thing that I guess I had copied, that someone else copied, and I went after them. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, Megan, like so prideful and so immature. And I think that
But
when
it
you're,
happens.
it does happen. And I think to like what you said about copying and then claiming it as our own, there, I think you have to start to understand like what things are framework and what things are like original ideas. Like it
Mhm.
was a framework that I had emulated from this other firm of how to show all of the parts of a brand suite that you designed. And it's like, it's just a grid with designs in there, like I think you have to just, yeah, there's so much more we could talk about with copying, but there's a book, I apologize, I can't remember his name, but Steal Like an Artist. And the whole idea is
Oh yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah, you acknowledge where your inspiration comes and understand your inspiration, understand the artists and creatives that came before you and who inspired them, and then how to take the pieces from their work and their ideas to use as your own tools. And it's like that,
Mhm.
and it creates rich work that then shares your own unique voice, because while nothing is new under the sun, there's never been a you. So like your voice talking about creating, defining the things that aren't original is what makes something beautiful. So it's like, don't not make something because it's not going to be unique, but just make sure you had some understanding so you can bring it forth in your own voice instead of a carbon copy of somebody else with a great voice.
I love that. I think we could talk about this for a long time. I think that's such a good topic. Um, So thinking about your own business and the progression that you've been on,
Mhm.
what do you think is next for you? Are you feeling like you've hit your sweet spot? I mean, you said you want to grow into this great designer. Is that
Yeah,
sort of like the vision? That's the next thing?
right. So I have some clarity around what's next, and I think it involves serving the people I am now, doing the thing I am doing now, and
Mhm.
having those better boundaries around not overbooking. And it's
Oof.
about getting disciplined with my process. And there's a lot of learning that I still need to do around all of those topics. So I feel like I want to become great in these things, and be able to acknowledge when I'm taking on too many things for my own pride. And like a lot of that pride too can be, I just want to make you happy. And I think it's like setting the expectations at the beginning, like, I want to do what serves you best. And what serves you
Mhm.
best may not make you happy in the moment because I can't take on this last minute request, even though I really appreciate your business and like love working with you. But having really healthy boundaries will allow me to serve them best because then I'm not burnt out. And when we come to the service you need, I can show up whole, refreshed,
Mhm.
and like prepared to do it well. And so I think that applies to so many things in my life, like not overdoing it. I'm very enthusiastic. And one of my like superpowers is that I can do things really fast. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think it's not just like in work, like I can like do dishes like that. Like I can do a lot of like manual things really fast. I'd be a great factory worker. And so I think I overdo my expectations all of the time because there's just like the metronome in my body just beats faster. So it's like
Yeah.
my my family. I have two little boys, a 3-year-old Griffin and a 2-year-old Raphael. And they have, as children do, completely redefined a day, a week, a life. And I've pivoted my business a lot around them. Like when Griffin was born, and it was in 2020 pandemic, and I was doing photo styling, it was really hard to manage childcare and cancellations because of COVID exposure, COVID cases. And I was like, this is not going to work for me. Like, this career doesn't align with having a baby. And so I
Mhm.
closed that chapter, to pick up something more steady. And I did creative direction consulting for clients for a time. And now, Griffin will be going to kindergarten in about a year. So I have a lot of goals around having the summer off and being done with work early. So that requires for the next year-ish so much discipline to abbreviate my day and to be able to maintain the level of income that I want my business to have with less time, which means being more
Mhm.
disciplined, being more strategic, potentially changing some of the clients that I have. Like maybe there are some where it's like, okay, this price point isn't going to work for you anymore, but I love them. So then you're like, okay, how could I pit? So there's just like a lot of
Right.
strategic bits that I'm trying to finesse to keep doing what I'm doing, but to put family first and to allow this business to support a great family life. And I have a friend who's like been holding me accountable because I was like, if I just shave off 10 minutes every day, for the next year, like I'll be there.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like
Yeah.
making this slowly over time so that when it does happen, it's not like this huge upheaval and life change. Like maybe I'll have some chill time to do whatever I want, like before he starts, but it will have prepared me for my work to be a smaller part of my day as far as the actual time.
So you mentioned you have a friend who's really helping keeping you accountable to this. What are you reading certain books? Are you doing therapy? Like, what are you doing to kind of find this discipline and set these boundaries? And you mentioned deep work and all this stuff. What?
So,
Give me all the reasons. I do the same thing.
Listen to the book. I like to listen to books like when I'm doing house chores, and it like makes it a fun part of the day because I look forward to learning and listening to these books. Deep Work. I never know authors' names. I'm terrible about that. Deep Work has been fantastic about determining how to have really meaningful time to think and to do that strategic work, and how to like eliminate busy work, and how to put yourself in a physical space that you can do that deep work. And then another book that a friend and a client of mine, Sarah Bradshaw, just recommended. She is like my go-to book recommender. It's called The Talent Code, and that one is about practice. And those two have been really great to like. And then another one is Scrum, also recommended by Sarah. That one is, and I also really like to learn from people that don't practice the same type of creativity or work that I do, which is good because I don't think there's a lot of graphic designers out there writing these books about deep work and practice and all that. But Scrum is really good. It's about how, as a team, to work nimbly and quickly. But I do a lot of the procedures or the processy that they do. I do that myself now, even though it's me and my subcontractors. Like, it's been really helpful.
Awesome. Good. I wrote those all down. I'll link them in the show notes for anyone who's interested, because I love a good book recommendation. Okay. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that stands out? Maybe it's even like kind of reflecting, like looking back on like when you started your business, anything that you wish you knew when you started that you know now?
The offer that's in front of you is not the best and last one you're ever going to be given. And I think that something I'm really good at is marketing myself. And then when the inquiries come in, I go into a different mindset of, I need all of these. Like, I'm not going to have anything else after this. And that has been taken a really long time to break that mentality and to be grateful for inquiries, but to, like I said, not overbook, because then I cannot serve people well. And then it's not about them anymore. It's about me thinking about that this is my opportunity to either make something that I'm really proud of or for the paycheck. And I think that will burn you out. And it will also, you won't do good work with that mentality for a long time. And another thing is, after I had my second, and I am so grateful I had an opportunity to work with a longtime client in this full-time capacity. And I kind of like decided in my head that I was a better thinker and strategist than creative, and was like, I guess I'm letting that part of me die. And there were a lot of parts of me I was intentionally allowing to die that were ugly, bad parts of me, so that I could move forward in this new life as a new person. But I wish I had known it's okay for your creativity to be dormant, to be in a winter season. And it doesn't mean it's over. And it doesn't mean that it won't return in a new way. I think that that's natural when it is so entwined with like literally the fibers of who you are, that it's okay to like get burned out when you're going through a massive personal transition, and it can come back. So instead of forcing it or like saying that's not me anymore, maybe just like giving space for what could be in the future.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Megan.
You're
I'm going
welcome.
to end it there because that's perfect. I really appreciate your time and chatting with me today. Um, Personally, I learned a lot, and I think you had some really nice insights. So thank you so much for sharing those.
Thank you for having me.
So come back again on another episode of Unaesthetically Speaking, where we chat about all things behind the scenes of building a beautiful brand and what it really takes to build a business.